Done
Talk
talking.
about whatever you. I hope you're done talking about the Wheel of Time, because nobody here, I shouldn't speak for Gus, has any interest.
Yeah, I want to keep listening to it.
You do?
no,
It's like listening. It's like listening to another language. I'm like, I hear him talking. He's testing the system, but you know,
I have 6 fandoms. That's
What?
enough.
you have 6 what?
Fandoms.
Oh, right.
I can't deal with anymore.
Okay. All right.
You
All
have
right.
to tell us those.
Yeah. If you're watching live, let me know that we're coming through okay. Sound and picture. Welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast. And hey, it's December 2021. We're through with 2020. We're almost through with 2021. And from there on now, it's going to be bliss and happiness forever. So, right? We just lost. Who did we lose? Who did we just lose?
Ben.
Oh, Ben. Yeah, we just lost Ben again. So anyway, everyone, thank you for joining us. Thank you for I don't know. It's a little break from the horror of real life while we talk about real horror in books and movies. So our guest today is Gus Moreno. Am I saying your last name right?
Yeah, Moreno. Yeah,
Moreno.
that's good.
Yeah, and he's the author of a new book called This Thing Between Us, which I read a description of somewhere online a few weeks ago, or an article. Might have been that article that you wrote for LitHub, Gus. And I thought, I have to read this book. And it's not really easy to describe, and you don't really want to describe it. I guess sometimes I refer to it as a bit of a techno cosmic horror, but that's not really coming close. And I don't even know if Gus would agree with that. But it's a little bit unknowable, which is good.
Yeah, I guess I've always thought of it as like a possession novel.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, like it has so much stuff in it that, like, I've seen it as a cosmic horror, I've seen it as techno thriller, and they're all right because like those elements are in there. But yeah, I in my head writing it, I was like, oh, this is my possession book.
Well, one review said that. Oh, really? That's interesting. One review said that the reader is left to fill in the blanks somewhat, which is I enjoy that. But and then here we go. We've got this paragraph. My consciousness fractured. Hidden behind the stars were terrible truths, a kaleidoscope of nightmares, and beyond them, I saw the shape of a mask, light leaking around its edges. So, you have that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great writing, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sure you know.
That was definitely me trying to
let's get those Lovecraft geeks in here on this too, reading this book.
Yeah. Wheel them in too.
No, we talk a lot about a lot more than cosmic horror here. Weird fiction, all kinds of horror. DC Comics, Marvel Comics not allowed, right, Rick? Is that correct?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, let's do introductions, and Matt has a prize, so let's start with Matt.
Okay, hi, I'm Matt. I'm running the Lovecraft eZine movie night, and if you want to join us next Saturday, download the app Cast, join the group eZine movie night. We will be watching Rare Exports as a heartwarming Christmas tale on Saturday the 18th. Anyway, our prize today is essentially an anthology graphic novel of Lovecraft stories by Larry Barrow, Brandon Barrows, with art by Hugh Petrus. This is like, for example, from the Cats of Ulthar. If you want to win this book, all you have to do is send an email to ezineprizes@gmail.com and put Mythos in the subject heading. We generally draw a winner 5 to 6 weeks after the show, and it could be you, so enter.
We wait that long because if it takes me a week or two to get the audio up, then those people also have a chance of getting in on this. So before I go on, speaking of heartwarming Christmas stories, did you guys watch the Advent calendar on Shudder?
No, not yet.
Wow, you guys should watch it. That's great. I can't even talk about it now because none of you have seen it. So, whatever.
I'm gonna check it out now after you completely like when you recommended Absentia, I was like, all right, I'll check it out. And it totally delivered. So I'm gonna definitely
Davis fool doesn't know what he's talking about, but I'll give him a chance.
Yeah, and then plus like when it started, I was like, this is like a student film type production, and it was so good. So I'm gonna watch this movie now.
Well, let me put it to you this way. I've watched Absentia several times. I don't know that I personally would watch the Advent Calendar again, but as I say that, I'm kind of taking it back because I might, because there's so much to that that you don't know what's going on, and the ending is left open, and it's just really all I can say.
Mhm.
You know, a woman is given a gift. She's in a wheelchair, paraplegic, right? I think, and she's given a gift by a friend of an Advent calendar. You know, those Christmas calendars you get in December where you open up the door, little prize or picture every day until Christmas, and it's a horror story, so that's why it's on Shudder and not on Hallmark. So I guess that's all I can say about it, other than watch it. And yeah, speaking of Flanagan, that was his first film, as I told you when we talked, Gus. But
Mhm.
remember what I said about that tunnel? That he said,
Oh,
Mike
yeah.
told me that I don't know what the plot, didn't know what the plot was going to be, but I had to do something around that tunnel,
Which is like amazing.
which is, and it's a real tunnel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like that he built the story that Absentia is like from that seed of an idea, like
Right.
unbelievable. So
It's like you walk through it and go, this is fucking spooky. I know what I need
Yeah.
to do. I need to make a movie. So
Right.
that tunnel is directly responsible for Haunting of Hill House, Midnight Mass, Haunting of Bly Manor, and so on and
That's
so
right.
forth.
Wow.
So, and soon to come, what, The Fall of the House of Usher or
Yeah.
something similar. I don't know if I should say this or not, but I spoke with Flanagan the other day, and we might get an interview in the summer. It depends on how the filming goes. So, but yeah, and Bly Manor, I said, Mike, I really liked Bly Manor a lot. That one and Absentia are my two favorites. And he goes, oh, it's really great to hear, because some people found it too emotional. I'm like, well, I don't know. I was crying in half the episodes, if you call that too emotional, but I loved it.
Yeah, I think Absentia is my favorite of his now.
It's great, isn't it?
It was,
Well, there's Oculus and Hush, right? I keep forgetting movies.
He did Hush too?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He's got a lot of talent.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've been talking to Gus Moreno here. Let's keep doing introductions, and then we could probably talk to Gus Moreno again. Rick.
Rick Lay, writer and Pulp magazine collector.
All right, Bill.
Bill Richardson, author and filmmaker.
Benjamin Handelman, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Ben. I'm just mostly here to, you see what Mike just did with that terrible joke? Someone needs to call him out on these things, because Kelly Young won't come on the show regularly. So keep that in mind.
So I'm mailing off two things. I mailed off something to Rick the other day, and I mailed off something to someone else the other day. And she goes, which one goes which? I shouldn't have said this. Matt's going to kill me. And I was like, well, these go to Rick in New York. And I'm like, this package goes to Ben in wherever, I can't remember. And she's like, okay, Rick and Benny. And I'm like, all right, I'll tell him you said that. Benny. So you might want to scan that package before you open it.
Yeah, I'm just letting you know when the show's over, I'm contacting HR.
All right.
Logan.
You do that.
Is,
We've got a suggestion box if you want to. It's, where did I put the trash can? It's over here somewhere. Pete, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Pete Rollick, and Rare Exports is the Finnish cosmic horror Christmas tale that you didn't know you needed. It's my favorite Finnish Christmas story ever.
Wait, it's cosmic horror?
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh,
If you haven't seen it, Mike,
I haven't seen it.
oh my God.
So,
Yes. And if you ever get a chance, there are 2 short films that the feature film are based on. Those are good too.
all right. Well, maybe I'll watch, let me write this down. I'm going to watch Rare Exports tonight. I assume it's on Shudder or some such place. So,
Whatever.
yeah, whatever. It better be good.
It is awesome. It is a heartwarming tale of cosmic horror.
That's right. That's right. Gus Moreno, thank you so much for being on the show today.
And thanks for having me. Fan of the podcast, so like this is a dream.
Oh man, thank you. That's nice of you to say. I really appreciate that. I didn't know that. So you wrote a book titled "This Thing Between Us," and there's so much of the book that we can't talk about, but there are some things that we can spoil, like right off the bat, because they're spoiled on the first page. Do you want to maybe give a synopsis of the book for the listeners?
Yeah, so the book is about this young couple, Vera and Tiago, move into a new condo, and right off the bat, they start experiencing like typical strange phenomenon, weird cold spots in the house. They're hearing scratches in the walls, and all of the supernatural activity starts to center around a smart speaker that they've recently purchased called eZine. And eZine starts to take on the supernatural, uncanny stuff. And right when all of the haunting reaches a fever pitch, Vera is killed in this like tragic accident, and Tiago is just left reeling. So he moves to Colorado just to like be alone with his grief. But the thing in the apartment somehow follows him, and then all hell breaks loose.
Speaking of the thing in the apartment, I was going to recommend this later. Short film on YouTube called "The Thing in the Apartment" or "Thing in the Apartment."
Okay.
And I've seen dozens, if not hundreds, of movies, studio movies that were not as good as this. It's like they're 13 minutes long. But anyway, back to you. So I think I wrote on Twitter, "You'll never look at your Alexa the same way again." But it's not just the eZine. So this isn't just a horror book or a possession book or a cosmic horror book or whatever it is. It deals with grief. Can you talk about what led you to write a book like this?
Yeah, so oddly enough, grief has always just been a subject I have gravitated to. No idea why, just it's something that like, I don't know, I guess maybe I like obsess over it, maybe because death is like such a big subject to me. I think like everything I write has to deal with like death and like meaning, the absence of meaning, stuff like that. But what ended up happening before I ever even conceived of the book was my sister-in-law, Carol, was diagnosed with cancer. And it was, within 4 months, she was gone. And it was devastating. I didn't think I could write ever again, just because when I would try to write, it just felt frivolous. Like it felt like I'm making up characters when like this like sudden loss was just like falling down on me. So what I ended up doing was just like literally just writing my feelings, writing what I felt in the moment, because I couldn't think in terms of like a narrative or characters. And what ended up happening was, as I continued on, in my healing process, I would like read my old notes, and I just there was like a voice different from my own, like a distinct voice of this guy who just sounded so angry and so sad and so what's I feel like Tiago has like he has a sense of humor like Snake Plissken has a sense of humor, just like real dry, curt, very sarcastic. And I was like, I was really, really vibing with it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to run with this. And I had an old story idea of this family moves into a new house, and the same thing. They start experiencing strange phenomenon based around the smart speaker, because I was really jealous of Paranormal Activity 4 when they use the Xbox Connect thing to like track the ghosts. I thought that was like a genius idea. And I wanted to write something similar, something that like didn't avoid modern technology. But for whatever reason, that idea just kind of like fell on a back burner. So when I had the voice of Tiago, I kind of just went through my old stories ideas and found that one. And I was like, oh, I think this might work. And once I connected those two things together, it was like the story just took off from there.
I've seen Paranormal Activity 1 and I really liked it, but none of the others. So
Oh,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
neither have I.
Well,
I was so terrified of the first one that I've read the Wikipedia articles of like the sequels just so I can like stay up to date. But no, I couldn't even
Man,
watch them.
Gus, that when the wife is just for hours just standing over the bed watching her
Oh,
husband, that's one of the creepiest things I've ever seen.
so
Yet
creepy.
yet no CGI needed. It's genius.
Yes, it was so, you know what? It was also scary because I was living in a house that I thought was haunted. So like I'd gone to the midnight premiere of that movie. So I had like no idea what it was about, what the like buzz was gonna be. So like I saw that thing, came out of the theater at like 2 a.m. and had to go back to a haunted house. I was like, oh my God, this is the scariest thing in the world.
This could have been a mistake.
Yeah.
I was just wondering in 4 if they used the actual Xbox or if they renamed it for.
I don't even remember.
So I mean, I just thinking that possibly Alexa is not going to be using your book in their marketing campaign.
I
Probably.
don't see that happening. Yeah.
And you also, this was interesting to me reading the LitHub article. You were, if I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, but sitting in the hospital parking lot in your car, and you were reading our friend Stephen Graham Jones, After the People Lights Have Gone Off. Is that right?
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear about, it's your sister-in-law, right?
Right.
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that she lost her battle with cancer. But what you said about death and grief, yeah, it's that thing that we all have to face no matter what,
Yeah. I think too, I've just always had an interest in philosophy. So I think death and kind of just like the philosophical, navel gazing of death and of the unknown, that's all in my wheelhouse. So like when I started following Tiago on his journey, those thoughts just came out too.
um, I just want to jump back to Absentia for a second, because I thought you would like it too, because of the way that grief plays along with the horror in that book as well, in that movie as well.
You nailed it. Like I thought it was going to be like, it's the movie's cosmic horror and my book's cosmic horror. So that's the connection. But yeah, there were a lot of themes that were similar, like the grief, just the mystery involved, and there are no answers. Things constantly happen to the characters that you really don't have an understanding of it, and like I just found it so poignant and so similar to like all of the themes that were in my book.
And so sad that this is unavoidable. And the one character at the very end, I won't give away spoilers, but looking towards the tunnel going, no, and walking
Yeah.
the other way, because
Oh,
he's like, did it happen this way? Or is she on a beach somewhere? You
right.
know,
Oh,
that kind of
crushing.
thing. Yeah. No, it's genius. Um, this thing between us by you, Gus Moreno. I also want to say that appreciate you mailing me the book, really. And I also I've got an Audible account, and I uh, um, purchased the book with a credit on Audible. And I'll tell you that with a lot of books, and this is to take nothing away from your writing, and it just adds an extra dimension to it. Like if you're listening in the dark to it, it's a lot creepier than if you're on a bus at noon reading the book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, Rob Moretti, he knocked it out of the park with his like performance of it, his narration. It was like beautiful.
you also mentioned in that article that you came to realize that, and if you guys have questions, jump in too, please, that you enjoy being scared. That So can you talk about that a little bit and how that deals with the horror of real life?
Yeah, I think, I never thought I could be a horror writer just because I'm a very fearful individual. When I was like a child, I couldn't watch MGM movies because they got the lion growling in the beginning of their credits, and I would get terrified. I was just like a scared child. So like that fear has kind of just like carried with me and when I decided in high school that I was going to become a writer, never in a million years did I think I could do horror just because like every horror movie scares me. I always thought horror fans were like, they like watch every horror movie and they're like laughing, nothing scares them. They go to like haunted houses every Halloween, and that wasn't me. So what ended up happening was I think I'd listened to like a Stephen Graham Jones interview, and he was talking about how like he is so prolific because he's like trying to get the story out of his head because he doesn't want to like stick around with it. Like he's like afraid of it too. And that really stuck with me because it's like, oh wow, if he has this fear when he's like writing, maybe I can also like take a crack at it. And I think that's a lot of like what my, I guess, style is just taking, the mundaneness of life and then just injecting unthinkable horror into it. I don't know what it is that draws me to it. I don't know
A lot of us
why.
could say that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why like I ended up like going into horror. I can say that it was just like I was just constantly like being nudged. That's what it felt like in my writing career. Like I was just like started off, I think like every writer just like doing the Raymond Carver, Ernest Hemingway knockoff short stories like type style. Like that's how I was writing. And every time I would try to write like a literary story, there would be like a serial killer or like some creature or something would like end up getting involved, which is what I was trying not to do until finally there was just a point where I was like, oh, let me just give like horror a shot. Like maybe people will like respond to it. And I sent a short story to, oh my God, I think it was Pseudopod. Pseudopod's like my first horror publication. And I was surprised by the response. So like, I kind of just kept going with that. And I kept following like my fear. Like whatever scares me is what I end up writing. So like, it's been working out.
You're making me think of last week I interviewed Catriona Ward, who wrote a book called The Last House on Needless Street, which is getting a lot of buzz. And it's a really, really great and really different book if you get the chance. But I bring it up because she said something to me in the interview that, horror is all about compassion. And I said, well, that's interesting. I've not heard that before. And she says, well, it has to be, doesn't it? Because as the writer, I'm telling you, this is what I'm afraid of. And I'm extending my hand to you, I'm paraphrasing, and saying, I'm afraid of this too, and let's walk through it together. So,
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think because just my approach to literature in general is like, this is how I experience life. Do you also experience it the same way? That is like, that's what got me into writing. That's what made me like want to be a writer, is that feeling and that connection with an author, and then with like the other people who love that book too. That's what draws me to it. So that idea for horror, like that totally resonates with me.
well, and it's also brutally honest, the things that people think when they lose someone and the platitudes that people throw at them. And, like you said in the book, you wanted to smash a beer bottle in their head because they don't know what they're talking about as far as it concerns you. But before I get to that, you started off the book kind of different than a lot of books that I've ever read, which is it's written to his wife after she dies.
Right.
It took me a couple of pages to figure that out, and then I thought, wow, this is really cool. This is different. So, what made you go that route? Did it just feel natural to do it, or?
Oh, it was the notes. Like a lot of the notes I had written to myself were just me writing to Carol, just like telling her how I felt. So when I went back to my notes to start the novel, I read that. I read me talking to Carol, referring to her as you, and I just found that, like, at first I tried to not write like that. I tried to write I guess, traditional first person type story, but it just wasn't working. And then at the same time, I'd read I'm a Strange Loop by Douglas Hofstadter, who is like a scientist slash philosopher. And he wrote a book just about like the meaning of I, like, what does it mean to have a personality? What does it mean to be a person and conscious? And his whole idea was that like every person's consciousness is just a loop, and like it's a loop that can be cloned in like multiple people. So like when a person dies, that person is like theoretically still alive because like my loop has incorporated like their loop in some way. And what I didn't know when I started reading the book was that he wrote the book after his own wife died, and his wife's name was Carol. So there were sections in the book where he would start talking about his wife, who has died, in these like in such a way that I was like, oh, how is he not talking about my Carol? How is he talking about someone different? And there was kind of like I don't know, it felt like a voyeuristic almost to like have this guy talking about someone that I also loved. So those two things, like the you and the notes, and then his book, just really pushed me to believe like that there would be a readership for this kind of book where the main character is not talking to anyone else but his wife. That's who the book is for. It's not for anyone else. So that it's gotten like the response that it has just been like super cool to me.
Mike and I often talk about the influence, what's the driving factor behind telling the story. And it's really important to figure out why the story is being told and who it's being told to, particularly when you do first person or second person narratives, because it frames everything.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've gotten off on a really good foot here, and accomplished something wonderful. But it also creates these sort of limits of what you know and what they know, and
Definitely.
And-
I realized how hard it is to write cosmic horror from like just one person's perspective. It's insanely difficult.
yes,
That was definitely something that me and my editor Daphne really worked on, was just kind of like trying to bring in the cook entity and just like more of that strangeness into the book, while at the same time not being able to explain it, because Tiago's not going to understand like what's going on or the mechanics behind it. So it was a really interesting juggling performance.
That cook, the first time you meet the cook, is a real what the fuck moment.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I wrote, that was like one of the last things I wrote too.
Really?
Yeah, just because I wrote the book and it just felt like, I don't know, like I needed some type of like a main menu before you got to like the crazy stuff. I always think about the scene in Matrix Reloaded when Neo fights the guy in the like the dude who's got like the Jet Li costume from like another movie, before he can meet the Oracle, like Keanu has to fight him. And it was like later on that someone, in talking about the movie, where they were like, oh yeah, he's like the password. He's that, before you log in, like you've got to like enter your password, and that's the thing that he serves, which blew my mind. So when I was writing this, I was like, I need something like that. I need like some type of some element that will like help set up the rest of the crazy stuff that's going to happen after. So like the cook was really just like an invention of necessity.
It's so cosmic horror in ways, and I think does really well with saying, you know, if this is cosmic horror, you don't understand it. You only see this tiny fraction of it. Just like Flatland. A three-dimensional person. What would a two-dimensional person? What would a three-dimensional person look like to a two-dimensional? They'd only see the two dimensions of that person. That's the analogy that I was thinking of. And then you get down to the personal, where it's kind of like that. There's nothing more beautiful than a child's laugh, unless you don't have a child and it's 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And maybe when Itza, I was about to say Alexa, I'll get sued. When Itza is just like in the middle of the night, just saying things, I'm like, that would be very creepy.
Oh yeah, like that. And that was definitely inspired by me, like maybe being stoned and asking Alexa something, and she responded in a way that I didn't expect, and it freaking me out. It was definitely like inspired by those types of like experiences. I was like, oh, I got to use that. That's scary.
So I read about half the book and listened to about half the book. There's I won't read this, but there's a place on page 56 where he's looking at the fridge, and there's letter magnets and everything, and then suddenly it looks different, and there's something else written there, and I just felt this chill go right down through my spine. Of course, I was listening at 1 a.m. in bed in the dark, and everybody else was asleep, but still, so it's cosmic, but it's also very personal. I definitely see the possession angle that you're talking about. So guys, before I continue, you guys have any questions for Gus?
Well, Gus, were you a discovery writer on this particular project, or did you plot it out, or some combination of those things?
It depends on the point of view for me. For whatever reason, if it's first person, I can just like I can just fall into it and just go from there, not having to like outline anything. But if it's third person, I need so much structure to, for whatever reason, third person just feels like God's voice. And I always have a hard time maintaining that for a very long time. So like, for third person, I do need like an outline. I need, everything to be like very, very laid out in detail for me to like have the confidence to go forward with it.
There's a sort of an escalation element to the story. Did you ever paint yourself into a corner and say, I don't know if I can, ramp it up above that, and have to wait for that?
Yeah, there was, so initially, the book had like another, I would say like another act where it took place in Antarctica. That was definitely me trying to just ratchet it up, keep going. But like, I basically started writing the thing in like on this like boat on our way to Antarctica. So I was like, this doesn't work anymore. So I did have to pull back on that one.
One of the things that really fascinates me is some of the things that I have done. It starts out being one thing, and I have sort of an intention for one thing, and then by the time the book's over, it's something else. Did you have any of that sort of experience on this book, or did you pretty much just power through it?
For sure, with the meaning of the book. To me, when I wrote the book has this very specific, through line for me. Like I read the book one way and one way only. And what ended up happening was I gave it to my wife to read. And she read it and was like, oh, so this happened. And I was so horrified by what she took from the book. I was like, no, that is not it. That is not it at all. But when I went back and thought about like clearing things up, I was so like happy with like this like double meaning that I just left it. I didn't really like fix anything up. I was like, oh, okay. Like I actually do like that there are multiple ways to read specifically like what happens in like the final act. I really enjoy that. I don't like easy answers. I like stuff that's very challenging. So that was something I definitely like backed into and owned afterward. So that was definitely like one of those things.
Well, the great thing about prose is that it's half the writer and half the reader.
Yeah.
The reader brings so much to it that it can take it in places just like you were talking about, where I didn't think that was what people would get.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's another thing too that it took me a while to really figure out, was how to write a story where you like leave room for the reader to kind of, fill their part of the story into it. Just because a lot of times you could be a little unsure if you're getting your point across, if you're getting that story across. So you may end up kind of filling in more than you need to. But I think it works best when you give the reader just enough that they like populate the rest of the book with their own experiences, their own ideas. It makes it an even creepier book than I intended.
Let me ask you a non-story thing. What's been the arc for you? You've gone from writing short stories to this, and I imagine a lot of things in your life have changed in a short period of time. What's that arc been for you?
It's been surreal. I really don't know. Like, so do you mean like art as in like
for you, what has changed in your life? And in a short period of time, I'm sure things are different for you. Mm-hmm. You've gone from a great novel and an audio book, and I know you've got some other things in the pipeline. I mean, what has changed for you personally?
I think I'm like so in it still that I'm not sure. Like, I still don't know. Things are like changing so much, and things are coming at me, and I'm trying to just keep up with it. So I guess really maybe if anything's changed, it's my work ethic, because I'm just a notoriously lazy person. So now I have to like like be a real writer. So maybe that's the only thing that changed for me.
And did I read somewhere you wrote this in 2020?
No, I wrote this a couple of years. I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years ago. 4 years ago. Yeah, it was, and I can get like, when the pandemic hit, the book was already done, and the book was called Mask Off. And
Oh,
maybe like halfway through the pandemic, we were like, okay, we got to change the name.
that's not gonna work.
Yeah, like this does not work anymore. So that, to give you an idea of like when the book was done, it was like done before any of that happened.
How did you get the new name? How did you come up with it?
It was my editor. It was Daphne. I initially pitched the name Monolith just because there's so much 2001 in this book that I was like, I avoided using the word in the actual book, but when we needed a title, I was like, shit, let's just go for it. Let's just name it Monolith. But then I started getting nervous and I was like, that's way too much 2001. And Daphne was the one who like went back into the book and found that like half a sentence of this thing between us. And I was like, oh, that is it. That's the name of the book.
You wrote something interesting in another article. I don't remember which one, I'm sorry. And I'm quoting you. But a protagonist already at odds with life, they're more cognizant, open to interpret that creaking door, that scratching sound. Pain makes them not stupid. That doesn't stop the characters from feeling fear, but it makes them more likely to survive it. That's one of the nuggets of wisdom in the genre. Yes, your pain is real. Yes, it can't get much worse than this. Yes, you have every right to be scared, but the underlying metaphor in horror is that you are always capable of handling more than you could ever have imagined. And it made me think of a Lawrence of Arabia quote. You remember? You probably know what I'm going to say. Where he's like flicking the match with his thumbnail, if I remember right. And so the other guy, William Potter, tries to do it, and he goes, it bloody hurts. And he goes, certainly it hurts. And he goes, well, then what's the trick? And he goes, the trick, William Potter, is not minding that it hurts.
Right.
So, yeah. And I don't even know if not minding so much as accepting that it hurts, that it's part of life. So don't rail against it,
100%. Yeah.
So, and there's so much in this book I want to get to, but that would, take 3 hours. But I just love how brutally honest, he is with his feelings. When after the funeral, when people are saying things like, I've got the book open now. One story was how elbowy you got on the dance floor if strangers moved too close. Vera loved dancing, someone behind me said. That was so her. I wanted to swing my beer around and smash the bottle on whoever's face. You love dancing, but you weren't some EDM kid. I don't know what EDM, that must mean I'm old. Thrusting the air in your purple leotard and blowing a neon whistle every weekend. And it goes on to, did they know this? Did they know that about you? They're so quick to define you, to pin you down to something, and it's just so brutally honest. And I think, Gus, it's not just that it's a horror book and a really, really great horror book. It's the fact that he has feelings that other people connect with. A lot of other people connect with when they go through something like this,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the goal for me. I didn't want to write a book that was going to make someone feel better about whatever they were going through. I wanted to write a book that was going to be a companion through hard times. That's what I wanted when I was going through, my hard times. So this was the intention of the book.
I don't know if consciously or unconsciously, I've read several books that on some level deal with grief. And I certainly didn't pick them that way, read or reread. One of them is The Night Country by Stuart Onan. I don't know if you've read that.
Oh no, I haven't.
Well, if you want to read a book that's soaked in Bradbury and Halloween and absolute grief,
I do.
I think that you would like that, Gus. Just,
Okay.
you know, I do. And after, when you get a time to read it, and after you're done reading it, shoot me an email and let me know if I was on target or not.
All right, I will. You're one for one right now. So
Well, thanks. The Night Country deals with grief. There's ghosts in it. I mean, you know, from the like the third page, there's ghosts in it.
oh,
So it is supernatural. Your book so much deals with grief. The Last Werewolf deals with grief, although he's very dark about it. I don't know, that's not the right word. He's very, you know what, fuck it, you know. And I've got feelings about it. I'm sick of having feelings, and I'm sick of being sick that I have feelings, things like that.
yeah.
And what he ends up with is his friend tells him he wants to give up because he's the last werewolf. I don't know if you've gotten to this particular book or not, if any of you guys have. But the quote, there's so many great quotes in that movie. I've got it on Kindle, so I've just filled it with highlights. But the one standout quote is his human friend says to him, he wants to just die. The werewolf guy just wants to just die. He's lived for several hundred years, and he just wants it to end, and there'll be no more werewolves. Well, his human friend that's been around with him for about 50 years is pretty pissed off about that. And he says to him, and in any case, you don't give up. And this is not a comforting quote. This is what I like about it so much. In any case, you don't give up. You love life because life is all there is. There is no God, and that's his only commandment. And that really stuck with me, that no matter what you're going through, you're still alive, you know? So.
Yeah, that definitely is similar to, like, I guess the themes in my book. I always thought of Tiago as I guess my John McClane, just because, like, he's not so much the man for the job, but he takes his licks, and he keeps on going because there literally is nothing else that he can do.
Yeah, he's gonna run across that ice and that glass and broken glass in his bare feet.
Yeah.
I did miss I'll have to read it again, but I did miss the passage where Tiago goes, "Now I have a machine gun." Ho, ho, ho.
You didn't catch that yippee-ki-yay motherfucker chorus throughout the book?
I'm sorry, I missed it, Gus. Forgive me. Now, isn't it that's a great Christmas movie too, isn't it?
Oh, every year I try to convince my wife that that's the Christmas movie that she should force me to watch.
Yeah, Die Hard and Die Hard 2.
Yeah.
So, and you guys have to check out the Advent calendar. What the hell are you shaking your head at, Rollick?
Well, if Die Hard is a Christmas movie, then Batman is a Christmas movie.
Batman Returns is a Christmas movie.
Returns, yes.
Correct.
You're absolutely right. Batman Returns is a Christmas movie.
Absolutely a Christmas movie. 100% agree.
Okay. To be clear.
Let's be ultra clear. Batman Returns is probably the most Christmas movies of any Christmas movie ever.
Yeah.
I might be slightly exaggerating.
There are candy canes.
Huh?
There are candy canes and penguins. So
True. Yeah.
I mean, there's the whole firstborn sons thread. Like,
right.
That's a very Christmassy movie. You're right. Herman in it.
And you got Christopher Walken. What else do I have to say? One of my favorite lines from that movie is like, "Bruce Wayne, why are you wearing a Batman costume? Michelle Pfeiffer, Catwoman, is like, "Because he is Batman, you idiot."
I think I've seen that movie in theaters more than any other Batman film, by accident too. Like, when I remember when that movie came out, Universal Soldier also came out. So I kept trying to get adults to take me to go see the new Van Damme movie, Universal Soldier, but they were always like, let's see Batman Returns. So I saw Batman Returns like 4 times trying to get an adult to take me to go see Universal Soldier.
So you were not an adult when Batman Returns came out.
I know, I was a child. I was like, I don't know. I don't even remember when that comes out. I was not even a teenager.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think I was married 3 times by then.
I wasn't married yet, but I have passed the 25-year mark, and I'm still very happily married.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very much a Christmas movie. You know what movie? This is the how. I mean, you said you're a fan of the show, and thank you. That means more than you can know. But so you know how we go back and forth all over the place. But
yeah, I don't think I'll be able to bust chops like John Langan, but I'll try.
I don't know why he's not here. I mean, you pimped his book in LitHub.
Well,
You
and
know,
then he got a blurb out of it. So
yeah, why is he not here? Yeah, at least to say thank you. He owes his success to that LitHub article. I think. I mean, that's maybe this is me, but so when Superman the movie came out in '78, I was 7 years old. And
what? What?
I was 7 years old. What's wrong with you?
I thought you were. Never mind.
No, you're far older than me than you think.
Fuck.
Aren't you like 64? I mean 54?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
50. I'm 50. Anyway, I would love when thanks, Matt. I would love, to see Superman the movie on a big theater screen someday. Oh my God, I would love that. That'd be so great. So anyway.
There's this local group here in South Florida where once a month they show a double feature of classic horror films. So this Friday is Silent Night, Deadly Night, and Black Christmas on the big screen.
Before the pandemic, the theater in our town did have a, classic movie night. And I'm glad you said that, Pete, because you reminded me when they come back, I'm going to request Superman the movie.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. They're pretty, it's a small town. They're pretty, friendly people. So they'll probably do it.
Sometimes it just takes a while to get the rights. Some of these films they don't want to put back out because they're not good, or
I would give anything to see From Dusk Till Dawn in the theater again. I wish there was a way where you could just do that.
Well, as we all know, all writers are rich, and now that you're rich, Gus, you can buy a new house and convert like an entire warehouse-sized basement, and with the hugest screen imaginable.
I mean, why stop there? Just take out the floors, just put a big IMAX screen on like the side of the house.
Yeah, you remember Fahrenheit 451? It's all about getting one more TV wall in their houses.
Yeah.
We've only got 2 walls. The neighbors have 3 walls. So yeah, just remember me when you buy that.
Yeah, will do.
Anything else you want to ask us before we move on? I will say this before you guys. Absolutely. I loved this book. This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno. Whether you listen to it on Audible or get it on Kindle or print. If you're a fan of cosmic horror, if you're a fan of horror, you really should read it. And I mean that sincerely. So
awesome. Thank you so much for saying that.
Anybody else have any questions for Gus concerning him or the book? I know what Matt wants to ask. You always want to ask what are you doing next?
What are you doing next?
Well, here's what he usually says, which you probably know if you watch the show. This book is great, but what have you done for us lately? That's how you usually phrases it.
No, actually, we're interested in whether you've been approached by other media with this book. I mean, it's newly out, but do you have another project in mind? What is that, like a participation trophy on the back on the shelf behind you?
For me,
your author participation trophy or something?
you know, actually, these are all of my wife's trophies.
Those are bowling trophies.
Yeah, those bowling trophies. I know they're all trophies that my wife has gotten through her field, through her work. So like, this is all her glory back.
You want a toe, Lebowski? Because I can get you a toe in 3 hours.
Stop. Okay, so what is she getting a trophy for? What's her work? I mean, this is a lot more interesting.
She puts up with Gus.
She puts up with me. So like, all of these are from like, you know, the Horror Writers Association of just like having to deal with me. No, but she works in like marketing and advertising. So yeah, she's like in that world.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure she's very proud of you, and rightly so.
So where do you keep all of your trophies?
Oh, they're what's holding up my laptop right now.
I don't really.
So are you working on any new projects?
Yeah, I'm working on some new projects. I have been approached by like other media outlets about the book. So like that stuff's kind of like in the works right now. I am working on a new novel. What I can say about it is it takes place on the Appalachian Trail in North Carolina, and it deals with vampires. So that's the book that I'm working on next.
Well, please tell your Daphne or your publicist or whoever if you need a blurb and want to send me an art. Certainly you don't have to. I'll be happy to get right on it. So
yeah.
I just want to add on to that.
Yes.
I'm actually excited now, and I'm gonna have to like follow you because I've been on a huge vampire kick recently, thanks to What We Do in Shadows.
Oh wow! Okay.
For those of you guys that haven't watched it, it's the best movie and then TV show ever. I highly recommend it.
I have a question about that. I loved the movie, but I saw the pilot episode, and I was like,
okay, so I'm just going to tell you right now, about episode 3 or 4 of season 1, there's a fight with a werewolf, and you know, vampires versus werewolves is a very old trope. This is the most brilliant depiction of a fight between a werewolf and a vampire, and I will go to the mat for that one.
So
really?
I get what you're saying.
Okay.
I may have to watch it just for that.
It's just bloody brilliant what happens.
Because comedic vampires do not appeal to me, but you may have just sold me.
Well, they're like pathetic vampires. It's like like this one vampire flies up into a window to kill some guy, and the guy's girlfriend starts beating him with a mop.
Because he's still a bat. He's still a bat. And then they call animal control.
Right. So he's in a little cage.
You remember that Buffy episode where she meets Dracula and he's like, I will leave you now. And he turns into a bat, and you expect all this, oh my, you know, them, oh my God, he's a bat. But the characters go, oh, bat.
I get that the pilot was a little bit shaky because they're trying to introduce the new cast, right? And you can't tell if it's going to be a remake or not.
Right, yeah.
But it's not a remake. It's 100% like it's like characters from the movie show up in every season.
Mm-hmm.
And it's done in the same style, the same writing. And I would honestly say after 3 seasons now, some of the TV show characters that they've added or these ideas they've added are just amazing. It's give it another chance if you can.
Okay, I will say the emotional vampire is like a genius.
It is.
I saw that it's in the first episode. I was like, that's one of the greatest ideas I've ever heard. Like, why don't we have a whole subgenre of just the emotional vampire?
Yeah, there's a lot of concepts it touches on, and there's a lot of surprise cameos that when it happens, you're just you can't believe they're doing it or how they even got the people to show up.
Is it like Brad Pitt?
You'll see. I don't want to spoil anything because people need to go and watch the episode.
Right.
But is it you?
Look, if they want to have me on, I'll fly out to Long Island and we can do that. But
Pete, you don't really have to go soon, do you? Good. I'll take that as a no.
Why would I have to go soon?
You wrote something that you have to go.
Mike, that was like half an hour ago, and he already left, ate, and came back.
Yeah,
You ate that quickly? Wow.
I do everything for you, Mike.
I
It's
know.
all for you.
And
Damien.
I'm not appreciative enough. All right, good, because Bill's got a great question for all of us that we'll get to in a few minutes, and I want your answers on this too. But as far as vampires go, first of all, Only Lovers Left Alive is probably
Oh,
my favorite vampire movie.
It gets a
yes.
reference in the show. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Huh?
It gets a reference in What We Do in Shadows. They,
Oh, does it really?
yeah, you'll see.
And we can't talk about vampires. This came from you, from your upcoming book. That's how we got on the subject. Without mentioning that Anne Rice just passed away at the age of 80.
Mhm.
And regardless of whether you like her particular types of vampires or not, she had a huge influence on the genre. I happen to like her books, her vampire books. I don't really like Lestat at all, but I do like Marius, in Blood and Gold, the vampire that's been around for a couple thousand years. Lestat acts like a 14-year-old petulant child, basically.
But he
But
is.
yeah, but Marius is, he acts like the type of individual that if you've been around 2,000 years, how you would act, you know, tired, bored, wise,
I
and so
read
forth.
somewhere this morning because I guess the news came out at what, like midnight or 1 a.m. or something
Yeah.
in my time, and someone commented that her biggest gift was her ability to write someone, and it actually felt like they were several hundred years or 1,000 years old. Most people that write these vampires, they just sound like maybe they're middle aged, or they sound like you said like they're 14, and they really struggle with like what would it actually be like to be that old. And that was kind of a key theme in Dracula, for example, in the original novel.
Actually, the series by Barbara Hambly, um, starts with Those Who Hunt the Night, and she's up to like
Right.
8 books now. There is a big deal about what happens to vampires as they age and whether they can actually save any of the features that they had when they were human, and how stranger they get the older they get.
I'm really glad you brought this up, Ben, because in Blood and Gold, which I'm rereading, as a matter of fact, coincidentally, there's a vampire who's very old called Thorn. And I won't spoil the book if you haven't read it, but he's been asleep in the ice in the north for a long time, and sort of with the mind gift, he sort of knows vaguely what's been going on in the vampire world for the last few hundred years. And he leaves, and he wants to find a vampire that's old, that will talk to him, will teach him, and not some young 200-year-old upstart like Lestat. So he finds Marius, who is. But Thorn is very, very old himself. And he meets Marius at a bar. And when he walks into the bar, I highlighted this because it's exactly what you're talking about, Ben. The warmth alone was overwhelming. Excuse me. The warmth alone was overwhelming. In truth, he had never felt anything quite like it. The warmth was everywhere. This is in the modern age. It was even and wondrous, and it crossed his mind that not a single mortal here realized how truly marvelous this warmth was. For in olden times, such warmth had been impossible, and bitter winter had been the common curse of all. Just little things like that, she uses that to point out, hey, this guy is old. He thinks old, so.
Well, when she came out, nobody was really writing like her. She had a different sort of a style and a different approach, and it was a nice counterpoint to a lot of things that were out there at the time. And there's a lot of people who are enormous Anne Rice fans, and she brought a little different approach to things, and I think it's a really important part of horror fiction for the last 20, 30 years.
Hector Plasmic, just go ahead, Gus. I'm sorry.
I think I might be wrong on this, but is she the writer who coined the idea of to become a vampire, you have to drink another vampire's blood?
No,
I
that's,
don't think so, but
okay.
she certainly helped popularize it.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm thinking of. Like, she's the first person I saw like use that idea of like getting bitten by a vampire, but then the only way for you to become it is to drink that vampire's blood.
Yeah, unlike
She's
if
the
you're
first
bitten
one
by
I
a
heard.
werewolf, you're a werewolf. It doesn't matter,
Right.
you know.
I think she was the first one to coin the idea of drinking a vampire's menstrual blood to become a vampire.
Jeez.
Nice.
Hector Plasmic on the live show just pointed out, it reminded me, Christopher Buehlman, who, by the way, is a Patreon. And he wrote a couple of vampire books, The Lesser Dead, and what's the road one, Pete?
Isn't the road? I
No,
don't
it's,
remember.
well, Buehlman, and the other one's actually my favorite, so I can't think of the title. But anyway, if anyone thinks of the title while you're watching live, tell me. But he addresses young vampires versus old vampires.
Mhm.
And in his world, if you're, say, 15 years old when you're bitten and you become a vampire, and it's 70 years later, you still have that kind of 15-year-old mindset. But then there's another vampire in the other book that's several hundred years old, and he thinks a lot of humans. He's really kind of passionate and philosophical. So
It's the
I would
Suicide
say-
Motor Club.
No, it's his other one.
Suicide
Lesser
Motor
Dead.
Club.
Oh,
That's
is that
it.
one? Yeah.
And if you want
Um,
to read a werewolf one, it's Those Across the River.
Just
Thank
to
you,
get back,
Michael DeBronzo.
just to get back to the drinking blood. Stoker had that in Dracula.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was a main plot point with Mina. That's why they had to rush to Transylvania to
Oh,
destroy
yeah.
her. I would say one thing that she did introduce is, one second. One thing she did introduce that I thought was really brilliant was the idea of a child vampire that doesn't age. And
Yes.
this isn't a concept that I know of had been explored. I mean, maybe someone had mentioned it before, but she really explored that idea with Claudia, how she, how as she got older and she wasn't aging, how kind of like bitter and angry and how it was affecting her. And that to me was the biggest takeaway from Interview with the Vampire, was that concept, right? This child that can't age, and just, how it destroyed her.
And also done very well, translated very well in the movie.
Yeah, with
Right.
Kirsten Dunst as like a 10-year-old or something playing her, right?
Yeah, and
Something-
she's on this bench with a doll, and she draws in these elderly ladies that think but this little thing is a monster. Sorry, Pete, go ahead.
No, we saw that also done very well with in Marvel Comics with Sprite, one of the Eternals, who was locked as a child forever. And we see it in the new movie, but it's been done, I think, 3 or 4 times in the comics that creates a kind of angst for that character.
Yeah, but Interview with the Vampire comes before the Eternals does, by at least a few years.
No, by 1 year.
By 1 year, okay, yeah, but still, it's first.
God, how do you guys even know that?
Because the Vampire Chronicles, at least the original 5 books, it was like a 20-year period, and I looked this up this morning when I was reading, because I read those first 5 books when I was in high school, back in the late 90s, and I tried to read The Vampire Monde when it came out in the 2000s, and I couldn't. I didn't like it at all, and I haven't read a single one of her books since. And so I was kind of going back through Wikipedia, rereading the summaries to try to refresh my memory of the things about the books I did like. So that was why, like, you mentioned you didn't like Lestat, and that was one thing I did remember is everyone always told me The Vampire Lestat is the best book, and you should skip Interview with the Vampire. And I thought the opposite was true. I thought Interview with the Vampire was the great one, and The Vampire Lestat was, I don't know, it felt...
Because Interview with the Vampire is not really about Lestat.
Right. And The Vampire Lestat, I felt he wasn't even the most interesting part of it. And I felt his character was different in each of the... Well, Vampire Lestat and Queen of the Damned is kind of 2 parts of the same story. But in each book, it felt like he was a different character every time. And he was so whimsical or something. I don't even... I couldn't get attached to him. But the some of the concepts, like I love that Lewis, for example, he, even though he could be completely silent, he would like make slight noises to give people a chance. And he was the only vampire that didn't have a type. He would just go after whoever to make it like fair. So if it was an old lady or like a criminal, like he didn't pick like the other vampires all did. They would always go after the infirm or whatever. I love these little ideas throughout the book, and again, and then the story of Claudia. So,
and she's, I just think it is very worthwhile to talk about her, you know, and she will be missed. She did a lot of work for LGB. I never know the order of the letters. I'm sorry, somebody's going to kill me. But she did a lot of good work for queer rights, gay rights, and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, she had clear. I mean, the characters were clearly bisexual, and this was in the 70s, right? And she's writing it as, she's not just writing them as gay characters, but as it's like a completely normal thing for them.
Right. That's not the most interesting thing about them. It's just something about them. Just like I have brown hair, not white.
I always loved. So I met her a couple times because she lived in Miami.
Yeah.
And she had this wonderful sense of humor. This is about everything. And you know, one of the things I brought a stack of the 25th anniversary issue of Playboy to get signed because they had an excerpt from the novel that had not been published. So she's like, "Oh yeah, this is where I got to be in Playboy." She's like, drawing pictures and whatnot. She was just funny.
She just turned 80, and I saw a tweet where she writes, she's got a picture of herself, and she's like, "It's amazing. I look exactly like I did when I was 30."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I can remember, Interview with a Vampire was one of these books that was kind of scandalous when it came out in 76. And my grandmother had a copy that she hid in a kitchen drawer to keep it away from so that my grandfather would not know that she was reading it.
Reading that trash.
Yeah. My father would call it parlor porn.
Before we move on, as far as to Ben's point about different ways that they would drink, in Blood and Gold, Thorne, he does what did he call it? The small kiss or something like that, where he would like dance with a lady and take a little bit of blood from her and then use his saliva to kind of heal it and use the mind gift so that she doesn't even know. And she might get a little bit dizzy, but then she's fine, like giving blood to the Salvation Army or something. And he doesn't hunt and kill, and neither does Marius, actually. And so the genre owes a hell of a lot to her. And I cannot. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I would say almost every vampire story that came after was in some way influenced, whether it was as a response and trying to return things to the more monstrous vampires, or in imitation, or to trying to take some of her concepts and pushing them even farther forward, right? So as much as I'm sure there's not a lot of Twilight fans on this panel, but like Twilight doesn't exist without Interview with the Vampire, neither does Let the Right One In. And even though these are two opposite sides of the same kind of character.
What year did Salem's Lot come out? Wasn't it?
It would have been the late 70s, I thought.
Yeah, I read a comment. Yeah, I read a comment from him about it, it wasn't a response. I wouldn't say that, but his vampires, he definitely didn't want them to be the romantic Anne Rice vampires. And in one short story,
it actually came out the year before Interview with the Vampire, a full year.
Okay. Well, I remember a short story later where a woman gets killed by a vampire, and something like she's thinking it's going to be an Anne Rice type vampire, and it's a Stephen King type vampire. But anyway, I'm really looking forward to reading that too, Gus. So
wow.
I have a question.
Yes.
I haven't read Anne Rice, but I've heard the theory that the female vampire in Queen of the Damned is really a disguised version of the female vampire that's Conan the Barbarian and Hour of the Dragon by Robert E. Howard. Does that sound correct?
I don't know.
Yeah,
So
I haven't read
Pete-
her books either.
I saw Pete might. Pete
I
might-
never read anything beyond the first one, Interview with the Vampire. I just wouldn't know.
I'd have to
I
go.
should read Blood and Gold. Skip to Blood and Gold.
So it's literally been 25 years since I read that book, but I'd have to go back and look at some of the scenes and compare them.
It has to do with the name being similar to Aklavasha, which is Conan's.
It seems to me that Queen of the
Vampire.
Damned was inspired by Lilith. You know, the from the first vampire from the Bible,
From
but that
Middle
was either
East.
her or she was connected to that in some way.
Okay.
But it's a long time since I read it.
Yeah, and she's one of two. She's a twin.
Ah,
Yeah,
so
she has
you-
her husband is like the other. It's in the book at least. They claim to be the inspiration for the myth of Osiris and I don't remember my Egyptian myth.
Isis.
Yeah.
Osiris
yeah.
and Isis. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll move on, but I thank you, Anne Rice. You contributed a lot to the genre, and you're going to be missed. Now, before we move on, Bill's got an excellent question for us. Before we move on, I don't know who needs to hear this today, but did you know that tumbleweeds are not indigenous to the United States? Pete, did you
Yes,
know
I
this?
did know that.
Okay.
Wow.
I believe
This
believe they are
staple
from, like-
of Western and
Yeah.
Southwestern stories actually came from Russia.
Yeah, they're pretty common in Mongolia, which I think is one of the reasons I love. There's a couple of weird westerns set in Mongolia that I really enjoy. I think there's the good, the bad, and the weird,
Yep, that's what I was thinking of right now.
which you could take and just transplant to the American West with no problem.
Yeah,
But
they
it's-
came over in some seeds, I think, in the
Yep.
1870s from Russia.
Yeah.
So, but it's so
Anyway,
ironic, though. And
everyone
I don't know
knows
why
the best-
anyone who's listening to this would actually even care, but I had to say it.
The best westerns are all set in Italy. So
Or Spain.
Um,
Filmed in Spain, actually, in the town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I
Mike,
don't know,
you're in
guys,
Texas,
but-
you might get to see them, but to me, they're very creepy plants. You know, they're so skeletal and they just pile up and they roll in. It's almost like they're sort of having animus to them.
oh, they don't like you, Bill. They don't like you at all. In fact, Gus Moreno's third book will be all about the,
Oh, they don't like-
tumbleweeds and
Yeah.
how, there's a whole mythology there that he'll get into. But
Isn't there an old Outer Limits episode with tumbleweeds and sentient beings?
this
Oh,
is all
wow.
this is all making me think about T.K. Ryan and his comic strip Tumbleweeds, which I loved in the 70s.
I
Oh,
think there was
the
an episode on
tumbling
Outer Limits with
tumbleweeds.
Eddie Albert that had sentient tumbleweeds.
all right. All right. So Bill, recent Patreon of the high dollar variety. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate all of my patrons. I actually posted a short video today, Twitter, Facebook, the YouTube channel, and Victor Laval is a Patreon of mine, and he kind of compares it. Well, I'll let him do the talking, but look for that video, and I appreciate him. I appreciate all you guys. And I just gave everybody a few, you know what I'm talking about, gave a little surprise the other day, Bill. So I try to keep the value for value going. So if you're not a Patreon, I'd sure appreciate it. Doesn't take much. Just Google Lovecraft eZine Patreon, take you right to it, or I've got the link in the show notes. If I get enough someday, if I hit 5,000%, then I will start paying Matt minimum wage. So I don't know if that's a goal you guys want to shoot for, then we can do that.
The only reason you would do that is to get everyone else to hate me even more.
I don't think anyone hates you. Also, be on the lookout for. I'm reading an arc by a writer by the name of Matthew Lyons, Lyons. I think you can pre-order it now. It's called A Black and Endless Sky. All right, so I'm like 3 chapters into this book, but I'm thinking this is some kind of cosmic horror, unknowable, and it's a road trip, and it's in the Southwest. So it's like hitting all my buttons. And I'm like, so I had to read this ahead of time, so I'll report back. But look for that, because I think that's going to be a really good one. I already mentioned YouTube thing in the apartment. Okay, Bill said, here's a fun topic. In an email, Bill said, name a book, a movie, and a song/album that changed your life. Name all 3 and tell the story behind them and how they changed you. I don't know that I could name one of each, but I can name several books and a movie. But why don't we let our guests go first? I warned you this was coming, Gus. So
Yeah.
that I didn't catch you on the fly. And great suggestion, Bill. Thank you.
Yeah, this is an awesome question. I love this kind of question. So book first, the first book that like changed my life is Siddhartha by Herman Hesse. It's the book that made me want to become a writer.
You're just sucking up to Joe Pulver.
I read it, I don't know, sophomore year in high school. Up until then, I always had it in my mind that I was going to be a film director. From a very, very early age, I was telling people I was going to make movies. So when I read that book, it kind of it blew me away, because at that time I was also getting into philosophy. I'd seen The Matrix in theaters and it blew my mind. So like those 2 things, like philosophy and literature, were coming together in this like perfect package that was Siddhartha. And it was like a movie in my mind. And they were, Herman Hesse was writing thoughts that I didn't know I always had. So like,
Wow.
that really spurned me to like want to become a writer. And it pushed me into studying like Eastern philosophy, got me into like mysticism, all types of like esoteric mysteries. So like that book, huge impact, huge.
By the way, I'm sorry, this is just to a sidebar, but you mentioned in that LitHub article how you're the guy who is absolutely petrified to death during horror movies. So I really want to watch a horror movie with you in person someday. Just, the only person I have that for that now is my wife. Then she's always going, no,
God. I saw The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Great film.
With Stephen Graham Jones and a group, it was like a group of students at the Stanley Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And I made sure I sat like all the way in the back, because I didn't want the students, and I didn't want Stephen Graham Jones to see.
Like, Stephen's so manly, I can't.
Yeah, to see me basically like huddling like in my chair, just like trying to like not look, but look
lying on your knuckles. And
yeah, it was like and then while we were watching it in like one of their like big like grand rooms, and someone from like, I don't know if it was like someone from the kitchen tried to come in from the outside, but they were wheeling a cart with like dishes on it, but they had a white sheet draped over it, so it looked like
the Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Yeah, so like as we were watching it, this person comes from outside, like wheeling this like body into the room, and we all started freaking out. Like it was insane.
Like a William Castle movie. Yeah.
It's great.
Anything else, Gus, besides that book you were talking about?
Oh, so
change your life.
All right, I would say like the Matrix. I'm including the Matrix with my Siddhartha like mention. So I will say like a TV show.
The Matrix is referenced in this thing between us.
Oh yeah, it's also referenced in this thing between us. I'm gonna go TV show that like greatly influenced me, and I would say
Brady Bunch.
Brady Bunch, of course. The first season of True Detective kind of like blew me, like it is like responsible for me getting into Lovecraft, for me getting into like pessimism and like cynical philosophy and
King in
like
Yellow.
yeah, like oh my god, it's that season was so like monumental to me that I immediately had to find out what inspired this.
Are
So
you?
like
I'm sorry. Are you
no,
familiar with our
like
friend Joe Pulver? He passed away a couple years ago.
no, I'm sorry.
If you go to Amazon,
Mhm.
sometimes he'll be under Joseph Pulver or Joe Pulver, Joseph S. Pulver Sr. But he was the Pete, right, guys? He was the King in Yellow. I mean, he was the reigning mythos guy when he was alive. In fact, he still is, even though he's dead. And he was a very good friend of all of us. But you should definitely read his stuff because that was his favorite mythos, and he loved that first season as well. So,
I'm going to check out his work now.
yeah.
Yeah, but that season got me into Laird Barron, got me into Legati, got me into Emil Chorin, who's like hardcore Romanian philosopher. And it just got me into like so many different things that now like this thing between us is like inspired by like those things.
Did you read Conspiracy Against the
Yes,
Human
yes,
Race?
Conspiracy
Yeah,
Against the Human Race.
yeah.
I read all that stuff, like, and it like that's my jam. Like I love everything that influenced that show. So like that's really responsible for, I guess, like the career portion of my life. And for song, I'm going Wild Horses by the Rolling Stones. That is like my number one like unrequited love song, number one argument with my wife song, number one life sucks song. Like I absolutely adore that song. It's been with me for like since college when my roommate Matt introduced it to me. And like we would play that song like after like a crazy weekend. We'd play that like if classes were going wrong, and like it stuck with me since. So like I absolutely love that song. It's had like a great effect on me.
Well, thank you. And I really hope one of you come up with a song of what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. That's probably you, Pete, right? Rick, do you want to tackle this question?
Okay. I'll use a TV show.
All right.
The Prisoner was Patrick McGowan.
Oh, I'm not surprised to hear you say that. Yeah.
Because I was working for a time for a manipulative software company, which will remain nameless. It doesn't exist anymore anyway. But they were playing all sorts of mind tricks with me. And I eventually figured out that all of these had an allegorical equivalent on the prisoner.
They were gaslighting you a lot,
They
basically.
were doing a lot of things like give me power, then take it away very quickly. My boss, there was a period where my boss changed every 2 weeks for about 2 months. It was like a new number 2. And basically, when I remembered that I'd seen The Prisoner and began to rewatch it, I figured out I just have to approach it like Patrick McGowan, survive.
Yeah.
And you'll never really escape, because if you look at the end of The Prisoner, he's in like a never-ending loop. But I realized the longer I worked for this company, which I worked for about 15 years, I was going to be in a never-ending loop. Because they don't have knowledge of what's going on.
Anything else you want to mention?
No, that's it.
All right. Who wants to go next?
I've got all three.
All right.
So I noticed mine they just happen to be that sort of like late teenage phase. I guess that makes it easy for things to influence you, right?
Yeah, sure.
Like, so picking a book is, there's probably 15, 20 books, right? You've got classics like Catcher in the Rye and stuff, but do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick?
Oh,
Yes.
So I had the book for 2-3 years probably, and it was one of those paperbacks that I bought it because I liked the movie and I didn't touch it, and I didn't even know the movie and the book were that different.
Hey, Ben, can you see this?
It's holographic, so it's like fading in and out of existence.
There we go.
Okay, I see Philip K. Dick on there.
The Exegesis of Philip K. Dick.
Oh, wow. You have a
Sounds
copy of it.
awesome.
And it is thick, man. This is not a book you sit down, a little light reading tonight, cover to cover. Anyway, go on, Ben.
So I had this book, and
It's great, though.
I was supposed to go on like a trip the next day to like an amusement park, and it was like 9 o'clock at night. It's like I'll just read the first chapter, and next thing I know, it's 4:30 in the morning, and I finished the book, and it's hard to explain. So I mean, I love Blade Runner the film, which is very remotely based on it, but the book, the way it deals with some of these concepts, I just think everyone should read it. I don't know how much more to say on that. And the kind of the journey the main character goes through emotionally, and where he ends. It's not a hopeless pessimism. I've seen people make that claim, but it's just sort of like more of a coming to terms with the world, so to speak. And it really affected me. I think I was 17 at the time.
And I love Philip K. Dick because he's always into what is real, what is reality really,
right,
and what is
this work
identity really. You know,
this work I felt dealt with that best because it was before he got to weird later on. Not that those stories are bad, but you reach a point with Philip K. Dick where you struggle to understand what he's saying, or it's too much work to understand and you kind of get frustrated. And his earlier stuff is a little bit too Twilight Zone, Outer Limits kind of to really enjoy on that level. But Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and reading it at 17 just crushed me.
just a short sidebar. Have you read essays and stuff like that are 11, what is it, 11, 12, 11, 22, 6, 73 or something?
I probably did back then. I read almost everything he wrote at that point.
Well, you might like this book. It's
Yeah,
a doorstopper, but it's pretty cool.
I'll check it out. Yeah, because that was probably of all the books I read, that one probably influenced what direction. Like I wouldn't have discovered Lovecraft really without reading that book first. Even though those two things are not necessarily related, but some of his kind of ideas, I started looking for things that were maybe a little bit more in that kind of emotional feeling.
Yeah.
As far as movies, I go with the first Godfather film. So again, I saw it around 16 or 17. This is considered one of the greatest movies of all time. I don't know if there's a lot I have to say that could add to that. It's really brilliant. Every single person in the world should go see it. It affected me in a lot of ways that probably not best to discuss on the podcast, but there's a lot about my life that changed directly because of like a lot about like one of the jobs I do is directly related to that. A lot about my life changed because of that film. And that was one of my favorites.
You're a hitman?
Yeah, that's it. I was like, so you're my boss?
Not as far as you know.
We're working on it. And then finally, for song, there's this really terrible film that came out in 1997 called Spawn. And the film's terrible. Don't watch it. But the soundtrack for it is the first CD I ever bought, and it's still to this day. It's widely accepted as like one of the best like music soundtracks, or inspired by soundtracks, I should say. And there's a song in there called "Torn Apart" by Stabbing Westward. And I listened to this song, and it was like, oh, this song's amazing. And so then I went out and bought their album, and then I bought all their albums. And then on my 21st birthday, I went to go see the lead singer in his new band, which is basically just Stabbing Westward, but he renamed it The Dreaming. And then I actually met my wife through going to see them play. And I've been married for 17 years now. So that's like about as life-changing as you get, right? And it was all because I discovered that song and really fell in love with the band.
That's awesome.
It is funny how the dominoes line up, isn't it?
I love you're the only person I've known who like has also like shared a love for Stabbing Westward. I love Stabbing Westward.
I was obsessed in high school after listening to that album. I was just, like I said, I bought every album. I was even tracking down like their old demo stuff. A lot like his first demos were based on actually Anne Rice. One of his first tracks was called Savage Garden, which obviously he could not call his band Savage Garden about that time. But then I got to meet him actually several times because in the early 2000s, his band The Dreaming, they were just a small local LA band. So I don't know that it still exists thanks to COVID, but there was this place called Bar Sinister. So it was right next to Bordner's on Hollywood Boulevard. Bordeners on Saturday nights would would turn a lot of their venue into a goth bar. So you had to show up in like all black or whatever, or you'd pay extra for your cover fee, and they would get all these bands to play, and they would get the Dreaming and then later Stabbing Westward. And so I got to go, like my 21st birthday, I went there. I got to hang out with him for a while. I met him, I don't know, probably a dozen times over the next couple of years, including, like I said, when I got married, my wife and I would go to their shows all the time.
Wow. I got into them because their song, I think it's called The Thing I Hate,
Yeah,
was in the trailer for the Duke Nukem
it was. Yeah,
video
they joke
game.
about that all the time.
Oh, I loved that trailer so much that I got hooked on the song. And then that song like got me into their other music. Like,
Yeah.
I think like that era of like a late 90s alternative rock where it's all about like just rage and just like just rage and like self-harm and all of this like
Well,
crazy stuff.
the album that came from Darkest Days, because similar idea, right? I got hooked on one song. It turns out that song was a track on this album. It's 16 tracks and it's themed on, I guess, a breakup, right? So the first 4 tracks are about like the anger. The next 4 tracks are about like dealing with like the self-loathing. The next 4 tracks are about like hate, and then the last 4 tracks are about like the hope that comes out of as you get over it.
Oh wow.
Okay,
And the
so-
art in the liner notes, it's all by Dave McKean. So comic book, Sandman connections and stuff. But there's a lot of, I was obsessed with it.
So I'm going to leave Bill for last since he came up with the question. Matt, would you like to contribute anything to this?
Sure. When you had circulated the email, I sent a response of like about a dozen books that have all influenced me deeply. I can't run through them all right now. Only one of them was fiction, and the thing that influenced me wasn't the fictional part of it. But if I'm going to pick one of those that really had a profound impact on me, it's a book called Ordinary Men, and it's by Christopher Browning. And it follows a group of German soldiers who were sent to the Eastern Front and ended up murdering a lot of Jews. And it was about, they were just ordinary working class guys, not really political. They didn't have any overriding philosophy, or, how like political parties often happen way over your head when you're down living your life. And yet they were gradually induced to become cold-blooded killers. And the point was that these are just ordinary people, and they were able to do this. And who wouldn't be able to do this? It was really profound. I mean, if you watch the episode in Chernobyl where Bacho says, you wake up the next day, you're still you. It was you all along. You just didn't know it. I really
that's a
found
chilling line.
But this whole book is basically a description of how that happened to a group of German soldiers, gradually desensitized to the murderous acts that they were committing. And then when they went home, they just melted back into the woodwork.
Yeah.
It was a very profound read for me. If I'm going to say music, I actually don't remember the name of the album because I was a little kid. I was like 3, 4, 5. My mother would play this album of stories for kids. So it was an LP that she played on her.
One of those old Victrolas in the 1800s.
Exactly, basically. And it was stories for kids set to classical music. For example, they had this story of some Spanish boys sneaking into a field to tease a bull to the music of Carmen. And the one that's
pretty cool, actually.
The one that I strikingly remember is they're pushing the Trojan horse into the city of Troy, and the music is the March from the Love for the Three Oranges by Prokofiev. It's a very short march. You could hear it on YouTube, I'm sure. But this album sparked my interest in classical music that has lasted my entire life. It didn't change my philosophy or anything. It just opened up my eyes to a world. So those were 2 things I guess I can mention.
All right. Let's do Pete and then me and then Bill.
Okay, so a book that changed my life. So I have owned about 10 to 15 copies of this book in my life.
In case you
And-
want to read it more than once. Yeah.
Well, no, because I love this book so much that it's
Dad
one of
joke.
the few books that I actually give away. And it is Robert Einstein Wilson and Robert Shea's The Illuminatus trilogy.
Wow.
So every time I find a copy, I pick it up because I need it, because I don't have mine anymore. And then somebody says, "What book changed your mind?" And I'm like, "Here, read this book."
Never
And
read it actually, Pete.
the one thing I love about this book is that it's a circular novel. You can pick this book and turn it to any chapter and start reading, and then loop around. And the story makes just as much sense.
So if you have 15 copies, can
Nope,
I talk you into sending me one?
I don't have any copies right now. I have no copies right now.
Damn it.
They're all, I give them away because I love the book that much. I think people should read it.
All right, I'll see how much Kindle is.
And
Anything
of
else,
course,
Pete?
yeah, I got you. Well, you asked for a book.
Oh,
You asked
please.
for a movie.
I didn't ask
So-
for anything. The credit goes to Bill.
All right. Peter Sellers and Ringo Starr, The Magic Christian, which is sort of this. Peter Sellers plays this. We would call him a billionaire now, who is just completely ostentatious with his money. He adopts a street guy, Ringo Starr, makes him his son and heir, and together they basically tear down society. They get a parking ticket, and he just bribes the policeman to eat the parking ticket. They fill a vat in the middle of, I think it's Piccadilly Circus. They fill a vat with cow shit and urine and blood, and then pour 100-pound notes into it, and just say, they put a sign up that says "free money," and just watch everybody dive into it. It's a very countercultural movie, and Raquel Welch is in it. I think Yoko Ono is in it. Graham Chapman, John Cleese. Just it's a hugely underrated masterpiece of counterculture.
All right.
You had me at Raquel Welch.
Yeah, I believe she is the mistress of the lash. So she actually can commands.
You had Gus again at that.
Yeah.
You had me at
look,
mistress.
She commands a crew of topless women who are rowing a cruise liner across the ocean.
And the ship's vampire is Christopher Lee.
Yes, and the ship's vampire is Christopher Lee.
Oh, Christopher
wow.
Lee's in it. Oh,
So
why didn't
that-
you say so?
How was it that it
Buried
changed
the
your
lead.
life, though? That sounds amazing, but how did it affect you?
one of the key points of the film is that everybody has their price. And it doesn't really matter how rich you are. Everybody will do something, will break down eventually.
What's the name of this movie again?
The Magic Christian.
Okay.
I think
Well,
it's-
it's obviously true because I found your price. You've been on the show for years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then, all right. So when I was at university, I stupidly got trained to handle the sound equipment at our university radio station. So in the middle of the night, I would be producing a show for people, and we got to see a whole bunch of we could get albums in the mail ahead of when they were being released. And I got the soundtrack for Pump Up the Volume.
Oh, that was a good movie.
Okay.
Before the internet. It was the internet thing before the internet.
Yes. All right. But on that soundtrack is a song. It's a remake of a Leonard Cohen song, Everybody Knows.
I
No.
bought that album because I wanted the Leonard Cohen song, and I was fucking pissed that it wasn't Leonard Cohen on the album.
Yeah, it's Concrete Blonde.
I'm
And-
still angry about it, Pete.
To this day, I still listen to Concrete Blonde when I am alone and no one else is around.
This
And-
is for all you kids had Spotify and YouTube and all that stuff, you know. Pete and I had to walk backwards in the snow to pick up our LPs. And when I got that thing, and it was Concrete Blonde and not Leonard Cohen, because that
Right,
was the
because you
first
think-
time I'd heard that song, is in Pump Up the Volume.
Yeah,
I
it's a
was
great
so
song.
mad. So
But yeah, and actually, I had to take the elevator up five flights and then walk the last 3 to the studio.
you see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Because and there was no AC in the studio, so.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
The anger is not dissipated yet. It's been decades.
nope.
All right.
So
Yeah.
but it, to me, so up until that point, I was this like kind of country western guy, and that was my first introduction into the LA hard rock scene, and I haven't left it behind. So yeah. Anyway, all right. Who's next?
I think that would be me. Let's see. Yep. All right. So Walden is a book that really changed my life and my way of thinking. I've got a whole list of quotes. Anyone who's interested in why I like Walden so much, and it can be a tough book to get through. I mean, he's written in what, 1863, 1865, something like that. But it's all about simplicity, and I've got a whole list of quotes that encapsulate the best things I have got out of the book, and where Thoreau talks about the life that we glorify as of one kind. This is the only way, we say, but there are as many ways to live as there are radii from a center. And it really changed my life. It's not about being lazy, it's about living simply. If you don't need less, if you need less, you don't have to be a wage slave and gamble your in and sell your life away. The only thing you can't get back is time. So I will just read a couple of those quotes, and I won't bore you for more than 60 seconds here. But here they are. It is a fool's life, as they will find when they get to the end of it, if not before. Obviously, the often quoted, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What is called resignation is confirmed desperation. And at the end of the paragraph, but it is characteristic of wisdom not to do desperate things. The greater part of what my neighbors call good, I believe in my soul to be bad. And if I repent of anything, it is likely to be my good behavior. What demon possessed me that I behave so well? You may say the wisest thing you can, old man, you who have lived 70 years, not without honor of a kind. But I hear an irresistible voice which invites me away from all that. Reminds me of Dead Poets Society, when they all start marching in unison out in the yard. And he uses that as an analogy, Robin Williams does. Instead of studying how to make it worth men's while to buy my baskets, I studied rather how to avoid the necessity of selling them. And last but not least, I love a broad margin to my life. Sometimes in a summer morning, having taken my accustomed bath, I sit in a sunny doorway from sunrise until noon, wrapped in a reverie amidst the pines and hickories and sumacs in undisturbed solitude and stillness, while the birds sing around or flitted noiselessly through the house. until, by the sun falling at my west window, or the noise of some traveler's wagon on the distant highway, I was reminded of the lapse of time. Here's the part I bolded. I grew in those seasons like corn in the night, and they were far better than any work of the hands would have been. They were not time subtracted from my life, but so much over and above my usual allowance. I guess you could distill all of this, a lot of this, into life is too short to be in a hurry. But another book that really changed me and my way of thinking is Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan. I strongly believe that if you only read one nonfiction book in your life, you should read many, but if you only read one, it should be that book, because it's a book that really helps you to think. Sorry, Matt. What?
That's on my list too.
Good. You just have to read it. Let's see. Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. The Tao of Pooh was my kind of gateway drug into Taoism. And, you can see a thread here of the books I mentioned, Simplicity. Ishmael deals with it. The Daniel Quinn deals with it, the Story of Bee and so forth. Walden, the Tao of Pooh. So they're all along those same lines. So I don't consider myself an expert on Taoism. I consider myself a lifelong student of Taoism. So, and Simplicity. As far as movies go, I can't really name a song. There's too much music to name that has just really impacted me. But I will name two movies. There's a lot more. And the first one is LA Story, Steve Martin. I always thought it was just this beautiful movie where this magic, what the fuck is going on, is inserted. And it's a bit of a parody movie, of course. They're driving down the highway. It's the first day of spring, so they're all shooting each other in LA. But at the same time, the sign tells them the weather will change your life twice. And I thought it was so magical how he met the woman of his dreams and believed in that magic. And I'm really, really oversimplifying here. But I watched this movie 4 or 5 years before I met Danielle, my wife. And I've always believed in true love, and there's a soulmate for everyone. And that's one of the movies that, it's not the only movie, and it's not the only, and there's many books, but it's the one that I think of when I think of that. And then last but not least, movies, Amadeus. I guess for maybe obvious reasons. I mean, that scene where Salieri is describing the listening in his mind to Mozart's composition is truly amazing. So that's what I've got. I'm sure there's many more like the rest of you guys, but that's what I've got for today. And last but not least, great question, Bill. What do you have?
First, Dave McKean was name dropped here a minute ago. That right there is the cover to Signal to Noise, one of the first books that he did. That's one of my pride and joy. Okay, so like you, Mike, I grew up in had a very religious upbringing. Wasn't as severe as yours, but the church that I was brought up in, girls couldn't cut their hair. They wore skirts that were down to their ankles. My pastor never wore anything but a white shirt. He wouldn't drink soda pop out of a bottle because it might look like a beer bottle. So that gives you an idea of how conservative it was. Yeah. And so as a result of that, I never got to go to the movies. That was one of the forbidden things, pop culture, dances, movies. And by the time I was 16 and could drive, I'd only been to 2 movies in my life: The 10 Commandments and Mechagodzilla versus Godzilla. And so
those two are really exactly the same theme too, right?
Exactly. They're the bookends of civilization.
That's right.
And so the movies that I got to see were on television. And I saw the Universal Frankenstein really as a small kid, and I saw it back to back with Bride of Frankenstein. And the thing that imprinted on me, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I do when I look back into that little boy's mind, was that the pathos of the monster. He's not really a monster. He's almost a child, and as a child, you're watching him. And the fact that he's not evil, and that the world is a lot more complicated than just good guys and bad guys and black and white. And that sort of settled into me, that thinking that there's a lot of gray out there. And when you're a little kid, everybody's telling you these black and white, rules of the road.
Right.
And that just settled into me that the world was way more complicated than that. And the bad guy is not necessarily evil. And so it's one of those things that just sort of settles into your soul. Music, everybody, when you're 15, there's something musical that happens that sort of changes you. That's when and the music you listen to when you were 14, 15 becomes what you listen to the rest of your life a lot of times. And my brother handed me down some albums, and one of them was a triple album live set by a band called Yes. And it was called Yes Songs. It was a live triple album set. And
oh gosh, I had that album. I played it till it was scratched all over.
I've had it in every format you can possibly have it in. And it's progressive rock. And for those of you listening that don't know what that is, it's basically what would happen if Mozart and Beethoven were given the instruments and the technology of today. And so the music is in movements. It's not like, everything I'd listened to before that were, verse, chorus. It has none of that structure. It has movements. Most songs that you listen to on the radio, in the first 30 seconds, everything that you're going to learn about that song has already happened. Nothing else musically changes in it. These change over and over again. The lyrics are abstract. And so it just changed the way that I looked at the fact that you could have complexity in music and other things, and you didn't have to follow the rules. And so that sort of was one of those sort of things that sort of seeped into my body and changed me as a person.
Mhm.
And books, I read Stephen King's Night Shift, and it made me want to be a writer. That short story collection. And then right after that, I immediately read Salem's Lot, and he kills off a main character in the middle of that book. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen now? I mean, all bets are off.
Bill,
And
Night Shift is the one where he does that stellar introduction, isn't it?
It is. And you talked about that a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
And, half the short stories in that book have been turned into movies or ripped off, in the case of the Johnny Depp movie. But I just wanted to I had written a short story earlier than that. But that was the book that I thought, I want to make people feel the way that these stories made me feel. And so it became the book that made me want to be a writer. And it's been a blessing and a curse ever since then.
While you were talking, I did think of something musical, Bill. I grew up listening mainly to 80s and 70s country music, Don Williams, George Strait, all that stuff. And classical, I think I said. But around 1990 or so, about the time I turned 18 or 19, Dire Straits came out with an album called On Every Street. And it blew me away. Every single track in that song blew me away. And if you have not heard On Every Street, Spotify or Amazon Music, or I hear there's these things called CDs and stuff like that. Listen to it, please, because it changed. I don't know. It didn't change my life, but I probably listened to it about 300 times on CD when I was 19 and 20. So anyway.
When I was in college, I was having a rough time of it as far away from home. And every week I would save up enough money to be able to go buy an album. And it would sort of cheer me up. And I look forward to that every week. And Dire Straits' first album was one of those. And just a phenomenal body of work. Not every song on every album is amazing, but every album is amazing.
All right. I want to let everybody know who is into this sort of thing that Lovecraft eZine now has a Discord server. I've got the link in the show notes. Also, if you go to the events page, are you struggling not to say something sarcastic, Pete? You are, aren't you?
Absolutely not. I am not struggling.
You're gonna do it, right?
I have no problem speaking my mind. I'm not going to, but I have no problem speaking my mind.
All right. Well, apparently there are a lot of people into this Discord thing. And I've been getting messages like, I'm so glad the Lovecraft eZine finally has a Discord. So anyway, the link is in, yeah, I'll get to the prize in 1 second, Matt. The link is in the show notes. Also, if you go to lovecrafteZine.com and you click on the events page, I've put it in there. If you know how Discord works, you know that you can text chat in different channels, like talk about movies or books and things like that. I even have one in there that says where you can promote yourself. And then every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, not that you can't use the voice channel whenever you want, but every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, I'll be on and everybody's welcome to join and we'll just chat about horror or whatever. So, and I have to say that I owe all of this to my son Logan and to Raven Dag Morgan, who is a good friend and wrote a book called The Dog. It's a novella. I published it about a year ago, and pick it up. It's certainly not expensive because it's a novella and it's different. And there's a lot of anger in the book. This isn't Marley and Me or anything like that. So I guess that's all I want to say about it without spoiling it. But if you're into the whole Discord thing, please join us. Raven and Logan are showing me the ropes, but this old guy's slowly getting the hang of it. So thanks. Anything else we want to mention before we leave, guys? Rick, anyone? Yes,
Yeah.
Pete.
All right. So I watched 4 movies we need to mention. Ready?
Because we don't want to watch them because you watched them for us?
So I watched In the Earth.
I tried, man. I tried.
And Gaia is better.
I actually liked In the Earth.
There you go. That's
Gaia
I won't watch it now.
Gaia has the exact same themes, and I think is much better.
But is it good?
Yes.
That's better. Okay. Gaia, I'm writing this down.
All right.
Where do you watch
this? What's that?
Where can we watch?
I think they're both on Hulu.
Okay.
And also on Hulu, I saw a Ramzan com called Little Monsters.
What?
Yeah.
Romantic zombie comedy.
Yes.
Oh, Christ.
I put it on because I wanted background noise. I got nothing done because it's really, really good. Gus, have you seen it?
It's on my list. Like, it's got Lupita Nyong'o in it. I've heard great things about it. So this is like another mark in the I gotta watch this right away.
It's about
Matt's probably gonna watch it tonight.
Yeah,
right?
it's about this loser who ends up going on a school outing with his nephew's school teacher in class, and they're all like kindergartners, and they go to the essentially it's a petting zoo next to the American military base where there's a zombie outbreak happening. So
I didn't authorize the story of my life. What's going on here?
Oh, yeah. And then this afternoon, I watched a 1980s movie in the tradition of Equinox. So that means it's like shot with a handheld camera by people who really don't know how to make movies, but who are trying their best. It's called The Strangeness. And
oh, that sounds familiar.
It's about, they go into this mine to see if they can figure out whether or not it's still got enough gold in it to reactivate, and instead they get eaten by what essentially is a Shoggoth. But the Shoggoth is basically stop action photography of a clay monster, and
You
it's
talked me out of it.
it's really bad, but it's so bad it's good. And
Mystery Science Theater 3000 good.
no, Llamageddon good.
Oh wow.
That
Like-
reminds me, has anyone seen Lamb yet?
I have not, but I hear it's actually good.
It's got really high
Yeah.
marks.
Yeah, I heard
Yeah.
it's good too.
It's what a fucking weird premise, man.
It's pretty bad.
just,
Anyway,
just remember, Matt, bah means bah.
Now, if
Okay.
you haven't seen Black Sheep, I think it's Australian or New Zealand.
is it as good as Night of the Lepus?
It's
You
better.
know what? I've
It
got a
is-
feeling. Go ahead. Sorry.
Black Sheep is about genetically engineered sheep who are also cannibals and eat humans, and their bite is infectious. So they're vampires. They turn the things that they bite into.
Oh,
Killer
come on.
sheep.
We've seen this story 1,000 times already.
So it's a
So-
romance.
I get the feeling that Matt has to go cook dinner and wants to
I
talk
do.
about the prize. So
Right,
you do
so-
that, and then we'll finish up.
Okay, so remember, you could win a copy of this comic anthology called Mythos. It's an adaptation of several Lovecraft stories, including the Cats of Ulthar.
Great cover.
Just send an email to ezineprizes@gmail.com and put Mythos in the subject heading. We'll draw a winner sometime in January, and it could be you.
Could be you. Thanks, Matt. See you soon if you have to go.
Yeah, I do. Sorry.
All right. No problem. Thanks for being here. Anything else before we go, guys?
I just wanted to say to Ben, thank you for reminding me that Stabbing Westward exists, because I'm going to add them. I have like a late 90s Spotify playlist that has like 3 Days Grace and Evanescence and all of this like alternative rock that I'm embarrassed to listen to with like anyone else, that I'm about to add Stabbing Westward. I like all of my favorite songs to that list. So thank you for mentioning them.
You won't regret it, I promise.
I know I won't.
How cool is it to get to meet the people in your favorite band? That's awesome.
The thing that surprised me that stood out the most is because you see people in music videos and you think they're larger than life, and he's like 5'6" or 5'5", and he's so tiny. And it was just like, oh, wow, this is a shock. That was the thing that stood out to me the most by meeting him. But
And he's
yeah,
bigger than Tom Cruise then.
Aren't we all? Patreon, it starts at $5 a month, and that's less than a meal at McDonald's, and it's only once a month. So help keep it going. Help keep the bar going, as Victor said in his little video. Just Google Lovecraft eZine Patreon, or it's in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and comment on the video. Logan tells me that helps with views. So my son's almost always right. In fact, he's always right. So we'll do that. I hope he's listening. Probably fell back asleep. If you're listening, whether you listen on Apple or Spotify or iTunes or whatever, ratings and reviews on iTunes help a lot. You know, whether you actually listen there or not. If you go there and leave a review, leave an honest 5-star review, because I'm kidding. If you like the show, leave a review. If you don't like the show, leave a review and blame Ben Handelman. So
yeah, it's definitely my fault. Definitely.
And Gus, thank you so much for being here, man. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Oh, thanks for having me. This was a blast. Thank you to you guys. This was a lot of fun.
Watch the Advent calendar and let me know what you think.
Yes, I'm going to, like, while listening to Stabbing Westward, I will watch the Advent calendar.
Put on the subtitles then. Actually, you have to put on the subtitles in the Advent calendar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's foreign. I forget. Is it Germany? I can't remember. Been a few days. So anyway, anything else, Pete? Matt's
Well, Merry
not here, so
Christmas. If I don't see you guys before then, Merry Christmas to everybody.
yes, happy
Yeah,
holidays.
yeah,
Merry Christmas.
It's the holiday season, and Matt is gone. We don't have to listen to him bitch about Wheel of Time. So
But you know what? Could I
yes,
also
please.
give a thank you? I don't know who mentioned it. I do know I got it from this podcast. Thank you for the Kathy Koja recommendation of reading The Cipher.
Oh, yeah.
You guys talked about it so many times that I went out and read it, and it destroyed me. So I just want to say thank you for that. I appreciated that. I love her work now. So thanks.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. And it's not just me. I think it's pretty much everyone here. But do you have Kathy's email?
I do not. No.
If you shoot me an email, she's so nice, Gus, that an email from you saying that you love the book would be very welcome. If you feel like doing that, don't feel pressured. But she's just that kind of person, you know.
It was when I read her book after like having completed my book, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe there was another level of like making the reader go through the worst possible things they could ever go through.
Exactly.
I can't, like, I fell short. Like it was like, her book is amazing.
So well, I don't think you fell short, but yes, it's a hell of a book. So yeah, Kathy Coa's a great writer. Pete's about to go to sleep, so that means it's time for us to go. Thanks again, Gus, and I hope with your next book that we can get you back on the show.
100%.
Okay, thanks, man. All right, well, everyone have a good night or day or whenever you're listening, and we will see you next week. Thank you.